Hello, magical people of the internet. I'm Jen, and welcome to I Never Thought I Would, where we discuss doing things we never thought we would do and the magical places that they can lead us to. I have a wonderful guest today. She is a friend of mine. She is a corporate consultant, an emotional well-being specialist, and an author, Anne Scottlin. Hi, Anne.
Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for having me on.
I am so happy that you had time to come chat with me today about your new book. And we'll get to that in just a minute. But as always, we're going to start off with a little story about doing something you never thought you would do.
Doing something I never thought I would. I never thought I would start my own successful company. I can say that. I think there's a good story behind that too, because I grew up in a really unusual environment as a kid. My parents were kind of religious fanatics, even though they were well educated. They moved us way out in the middle of the country, like in the middle of nowhere, literally. I was homeschooled until I was 15 and a half. I even then went to a really conservative religious small boarding high school. And I was kind of programmed that I had three choices. I guess I'm going to give one away here when I say I could either be like a teacher, a nurse, or a pastor's wife.
Wow.
And it wasn't outlined in ink for me by my parents, but there was the environment I was raised in, there was sort of these expectations. And then also there was never talk of me there was always talk of me going to college because they were educated, but there was never talk of me sort of choosing a more adventurous career path. It was much more your role as a wife and mother will be, and this kind of thing. So
Wow.
I came really out of a really sheltered place, and so that's there's the beginning of the story.
Okay, yeah, we have so much to unpack. So I have a few questions. So first of all, what religion were you raised?
So it was Christian, but it was a really, really, really right-wing Protestant. It kind of was off the chart. So really close to a cult kind of experience, had a prophet. And so,
yeah, especially when you're in like a very isolated community and the religion is the center of the community,
right?
That can feel a little cult-like, especially like as a teenager and a young person when you're not exposed to anything else. So, when did you decide to break out of that little bubble?
It was a really long, agonizing process.
I can imagine.
Yeah, because the thing is, when you're raised that way from being a little kid, you don't know there's anything different. We weren't allowed to have television. We weren't allowed to listen to popular music. We weren't allowed to read fiction. We weren't allowed to. I didn't hardly have any friends. I was homeschooled, and it wasn't the new like co-op homeschooling. It was like old world. There's no one for 50 miles, so we're homeschooling kind of thing. So I think it really wasn't until college when, again, I went to a very conservative Christian college.
Which one?
I went to a small private liberal arts college in the South, but it was also sort of a Bible college. So I was actually getting a religious studies degree, and then I was also getting a history degree. And
but at least you weren't so isolated.
Well, that's the thing. It was much more, that was broader. Of course, I didn't have a car. I was living in the dorm. So you're still kind of, I got married extremely young, which kind of fit the profile. And that turned out to be a very bad mistake, unfortunately. But we were together for several years. And then I was kind of fulfilling the role I'd been raised to be. I was the kind of perfect 1950s housewife. I was like so-and-so's wife. It wasn't like Anne in her own right, which really went against my personality because I love people, but I also love like being in charge of stuff and like being adventurous and kind of being on the front lines. That's where my natural energy was.
So when did you hit your breaking point in terms of like deciding that you could no longer stay in that marriage and you needed to have like a broader experience in your life?
Yeah. I guess, well, clearly when the marriage ended, when I found out that he had other relationships, women, houses, cars in other states, and I was too gullible and sheltered to have any clue of even like the signs to look for.
Oh.
And that was the end where I was just, but what happened was my religious experience got pulled out from under my feet. I didn't know where I was coming down to ground. I had no idea what was up and what was down, my relationship. And mostly I realized I had absolutely no idea what my personal vision in my life was. I had no idea what I was supposed to do if I really fulfilled sort of, that thing in your gut that tells you should go in a certain direction. And it was that kind of awful experience though, and sometimes they so often do, that drives you to take such a deep look at yourself, to take a wider look at your world, to push yourself and find a path that gets you excited about just being yourself, which is what I did ultimately in starting a company.
Okay, so where did you go? Where did you move to? Where did you end up? And what was this first company?
Yeah. So I moved, I was still in the South, which I was not originally from. I was a West Coast child, born in the Seattle area. So I moved back to the West Coast to California, where I had a few friends from years past and kind of like get grounded, get a grip. To snap me out, I started doing volunteer work for a humanitarian organization, which really got me out of my own funk, because I realized it was especially was helping women internationally at that point, like who can't make their own choices. And I was like, whoa, I'm like, poor me, but I also can make choices. I have this ability to, no one can stop me. I'm free for the first time in my life. Honestly, I felt that. And at this point, I'm like in my late 20s. And so then I went back to graduate school, which I hadn't been able to do. On the side, I'd always been a writer. So I was doing copy editing, like people's thesis and books and whatever. I ultimately got involved with the arts again, as you know, because I'm also an actor, and started.
Well, that's why I'm actually
Yeah.
shocked, because I'm like, oh my God, like how you didn't even have a TV growing up. Like, how did you become an actor?
You have no idea. It's still embarrassing because people will rattle off movies and names, and like, you just can't catch up when granted, by my 20s, I did have a TV when I was married. I mean, we weren't in as strict an environment as my parents had been, but still, no alcohol, lots of other kind of givens, but so my cultural exposure was very, very low. Like I still don't know most of the words to pop songs. And people are like, I have like a friend from India, and she's like, I grew up watching Baywatch, I know every single episode. And I'm like, well, that's amazing, because I didn't have a TV. And she's like, what? Like, she's like, your picture of what the typical American, right? And she's like, how is that possible? So I'm like, yeah, I'm I like being creative. I know that. I know I love writing. I know I love being an actor. I know I love playing a character, which is also interesting and probably has a lot to do with also my background, creating a comfort zone for me to express myself.
Totally.
Which actually helped launch me into my consulting and teaching and all the other things.
Well, yeah, because you're presenting, you're in front of an audience, when you do corporate trainings, like all of those skills definitely are transferable. So you went to grad school and then you started your first company.
Yeah, I started my first company, which was initially around coaching. So life coaching. Also, I had business experience. So business coaching, kind of integrating the two. I was also coaching some actors and artists on the creative side, and realized that they needed the business side a lot. And I had some traditional business jobs in the past. So I started taking kind of my knowledge and then my hands-on experience with people, and really started taking them on my own journey, which was to really find joy.
Yes, that is your brand. Your whole brand is about living a life of joy, finding joy in everything that you do.
It's
Yeah.
so true. And it's interesting because as a kid and so forth, and I think I said this before, but like I bought into the whole thing because I didn't know any different. And you're expected to be joyful, because if you're not joyful, that means you're not doing your religion right. And so when I was unhappy and depressed and a hormonal teenager, as we all have been, then you feel bad, like you're not hitting the mark, that you're somehow falling short. And I was pretty much just miserable most of the time. I was very fortunate. I was in an abusive situation in a physical standpoint or anything like that. But the psychological and emotional was really tough. And so,
Yeah,
yeah.
that definitely takes a toll. So, okay, I'm just curious. Were you still able to have a relationship with your family once your marriage ended and once you decided that like this is not the life for me?
Right. Fortunately, yes. It had been strained to a certain extent for many
Mhm.
years. It would kind of come and go where I'd get along with one parent or the other, or one sibling or the other. Um, I think that they were very supportive during the divorce because they were very much about my safety and that
Mhm.
I would be okay. Um, but they weren't supportive of the divorce. So they supported me, but my father also sat me down and told me, so I'm glad you're in a safe situation now, but you do realize, right, that you'll always be married to him in heaven. And I'm like, oh, I'm so looking forward to heaven. I'm not trying to be sacrilegious there because I'm still a spiritual person. But yeah, so you can see how these like tensions, and because they didn't change. A lot of people will go off kind of a deep end and then come around.
Mhm.
They stayed. They still are. Like it's a fixed thing. And
Yeah.
so, but I'm very fortunate, and I went through a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. And in the end, I decided that it was time for me to grow up and be the bigger person and be like, you know what? They are the only family I'm going to get. They're the only parents, and I get along really well with my brothers now and stuff. They're the only parents I'm ever going to have. They love me. My mom is very loving. My dad loves me in his own way. I'm just going to I had to lay down some rules, sort of like, if I come to visit, we're not going to talk about X, Y, and Z because
Yes.
that's not going to work.
Well, you had to set up
Yeah.
boundaries because that lifestyle didn't work for you. And it's great that it works for them,
Yes.
and everybody has the freedom. Thank God, we live in, you're in the US, I'm in
Right.
Canada. We have freedom of choice, freedom of religion. We can express ourselves however we want. But that's the other thing too, is like, we can't impose our values and our beliefs on anybody else. And everybody just has to find what works for them. So I'm so glad that you were able to find yourself and be able to, stand in your power as an individual and as somebody who has their own ideas and their own beliefs. And look at you now.
And
You've
it's so
started
much
several
fun.
businesses.
Yes, yes. I've started a couple businesses. They've evolved, they've combined. And it's just really exciting. And when you're finally it's not like there's a certain set of principles that I think people should throw out. That's not how I see it. What I see is you need to live in your own truth. You need to find that deep within you, whether that's spiritual for you or whatever that is. And then stop caring about what other people think, because this is so funny, because what I cared about was that people wouldn't think I was conservative enough. Stop caring about what other people think. I mean, I became an actress, for crying out loud. and live your life and just live it for joy. Like, what is the point? We have this gift of time. And if you're not enjoying it, then something needs to shift. Something needs to change.
Yes.
We can't change all our circumstances, but we can change how we relate to those circumstances. And that's pretty much what I've set up my life around now.
That's incredible. So I want to talk about your consulting business,
Yeah.
and this whole joy philosophy is
Yeah.
part of that. So can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Absolutely. So what I do is I do business and corporate training and consulting. I've been working with several startups through COVID also because emotional wellness became suddenly a topic of real interest in a way that it hadn't before.
Mhm.
So working with several companies in a consulting capacity, and then also developing over the last few years a training program where I go into either leadership groups or teams, and we really talk about the genius of joy, which is how tapping into it, it's very practical, honestly, but also experiential, how tapping into that joy that I believe we were all actually born with,
Yeah.
um, can it's a whole, we have to treat the whole person now. I can't just give you, I'm not a financial consultant. I'm not just, I can't just give you business advice and expect you to find happiness at home. It's a whole person transition. How you are at home is how you were going to perceive your work, and vice versa. So coming to accept, like, living in a more joyful space and taking really small practical steps to get you there is something that not only can make your work-life integration, especially these days, a more positive experience, but also be good for your company. It's good for the bottom line when you have happy employees.
Definitely. Definitely. And I just know that from back in the day when I used to work in restaurants. I worked in a few different restaurants when I was younger. And it's funny, like, when everybody's miserable at work, the environment kind of takes a toll on you. And the restaurant doesn't flourish as well. And I worked in environments where one of their goals is to keep employees happy, and treat them with respect and treat them in a certain way. One of the restaurants that I used to manage, they would give everybody a monthly allowance to come and eat at the restaurant. They wanted people to be invested in the success of the company. And everybody was like a lifer. If somebody got a job there, they never left because it was just such a positive environment. And it does make a big difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we have the greatest opportunity to kind of make headway with this, sort of in the shadow of COVID.
Yeah.
People understanding, they saw what happened when emotional wellness went into crisis. And then by people were given a lot of support, everything, a lot of the services and companies kicked in. Now it is, how do we make that the new normal, instead of, oh, we only do this when we're having a global pandemic.
So now I want to talk about your book. It just came out this summer and it's called Live for Joy, and it is a gorgeous book. So can you tell us how the book came about and a little bit about what we can find inside?
Absolutely. So it's, as you said, it's called Live for Joy. It's a really beautiful book, 280 something pages.
Gorgeous.
And just what I wanted to do was write an empowerment book, personal empowerment book, that you didn't have to read a whole chapter or listen to a whole chapter to get your punch for the day, to get your bang for your buck. I wanted you to be able to have a book that you could take even 1 or 2 minutes with and take away a thought for the day, or a couple thoughts for the day, that could really make an impactful difference in your life, in helping your emotional wellness, giving you courage, helping you live in your best self, make better decisions. So that's how this book was born. It's 12 chapters, all about how to connect with your best self, how to build your emotional well-being, which is even building your, emotional intelligence. Like, they're all working together. So it's 12 chapters and 12 different ways. And I have some people who will just like pick it up off their coffee table and read it once in a while. I have some people who will put it like on their bedside, and they've said they enjoy it because they can kind of get a thought for the day. It's all original content. So it's not a compilation. It's all original written content. And just finding those small tools and small adjustments in your life. It isn't dramatic or traumatic, that you can start living in your joy. So that's what this book is about. And
I love how you said it's like little small things, because I know personally from my own experience, like sometimes when you want to make a big change, you think you need to do something big. And sometimes that big thing is out of reach.
Yeah.
But a lot of times the big change doesn't come from a big thing. It comes from the accumulation of small, consistent things that you commit to. And so that's just brilliant to me. And do you mind just kind of like reading a little
Oh,
excerpt, leave us
sure.
with like,
Oh, sure. No,
a
I would
little thought of the
absolutely
day or
love to.
something?
So what I forgot to tell everyone is that opposite every bit of content is a full page of outrageously beautiful art or photography that's been painstakingly by me myself selected to go with the words. So it's an experience. It's visual. It's, you however you're going to absorb this, they work together. So
it's a sensorial experience. It's not
yes,
just the words,
sensorial.
it's like the image to
Mhm.
take your imagination somewhere.
Absolutely. So here's one. I'll read it to you and I'll show you the picture. It says, if you wish to make room for wisdom, you may need to first declutter the shelves of the mind. And here's the picture.
Love that.
So it's very much how the whole book is put together. There's a very short message in the theme of each chapter, which that one is to listen to your inner genius, because we already have this wisdom in us, most of us, that we need. We just don't think we do. We haven't recognized it or connected to it. Yeah, you pick the area you want to study, and then you have amazing. I'll read you another one that I love. This is a little heavier. Some are very simple, some are a little philosophical. We believe that our perspectives are truths, yet they are mere reflections of our own interpretations. And that's one of those things why this is why it's great, because you can just kind of chew on that for a while. But because our interpretation is what we see. And then I love this, where the apple only sees itself as the core.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So then I'll say it again. When we believe our perspectives are truth, what we see, right? Yet they are merely reflections of our own interpretations. So, and again, that I just randomly opened a page, and that one was a little heavier, is a little more in the philosophy section. But again, kind of that imagery and words to kind of really take it in and feel it. And there's chapter introductions that are great, that help you kind of explain what the purpose of the chapter is and how you can best use it, and kind of how to use the words in those following pages. So it's really wonderful. And I'm so thankful to you for letting me introduce it here.
Yes. Yes. Well, it sounds brilliant. Like, you are so insightful and knowledgeable, and I love the book. It's beautiful. I can't wait to get my own copy. So why don't you tell everybody out in the interweb where they can find theirs and where they can find you?
Absolutely. Okay, so you can find me on my website, which is AnnScottlin.com. Check out all the different things that I offer and the things that I do. The book is also on that website. It's just AnnScottlin.com/book. And you can order it from there. You can order it from Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. I know you're going to put up a link. I'll send you the best link in the notes so that you have it to order.
Yeah, I'll have all the links below so everybody can find you, social media, website, book, all of that stuff.
Awesome.
And then actually, Anne is so gracious. She is offering everybody who tunes in a free gift of a joy journal.
Yes.
And if you are interested, first tell us a little bit about what this joy journal is.
Sure. Yeah. So it's just a 1-week experience. You have like 1 or 2 questions in the morning, that very short answer, and 1 or 2 at night. And it's really about opening up and creating your joy awareness about yourself. Like, how aware are you about what makes you happy, or what really sucks the happiness out of you? How did the choices in your day affect those things? So it's just a little journey of 7 days. It's also got some beautiful illustrations and photography and quotes that just kind of help you connect with it, because a lot of it's just awareness. It's how we are aware of. A lot of people say, I totally, like, I feel like my joy is missing or damaged or lost, but it's never really lost. I believe it's always there. It's just a matter of reconnecting to it. I mean, we've all gone through these periods of time in our life where we kind of numb out But it doesn't mean the joy is gone. It's just like, let's reopen that connection, that heart to mind connection. So that's what it's for. On my website, you can sign up for the newsletter, or you can go directly to the journal, which is anscottlin.com/joy journal, and get your copy. It's great because you can download the digital version and type your answers in, or you can print out the color version and, create your own little printed color booklet if you like longhand. So whatever you like, yeah, that's there for you.
Amazing. Yeah, I prefer longhand, especially like when I'm journaling and stuff. I'm more connected to it. And of course, we'll have all the links below. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat today and sharing all your insight. This is fabulous.
Oh, thank you, Jen. It was such a pleasure to be here. I always love working with you, and sending much joy to you and everyone watching or listening today.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you all out there in the interweb. I'd like to challenge you to do something you never thought you would do, especially if it will help connect you to your joy. Let us know what it is in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a beautiful day.